Melissa Harrison here with our latest edition of the Religion Unplugged podcast. Today we're talking with A.J. Jacobs, author of The Year of Living Biblically, about his book, Thanks 1,000, A Gratitude Journey. Our executive director, Paul Glatter, sat down with Jacobs in our studio. Let's listen in.
I'm here to talk with our guest, A.J. Jacobs, who's a writer, best-selling author of several different books. His most recent book is called Thanks 1,000, A Gratitude Journey, which we want to hear about. And his previous work touched on religion, and so that's what we're going to get into and check up on. But AJ, tell us about this book, Thanks 1,000. What is this book about?
Well, this one came about because I had read so much about the importance of gratitude, partly while doing a project on the Bible, which talks about gratitude. And so I wanted to start a ritual of gratitude in my own life. But as I say in the book, I'm not very religious. So instead of saying a prayer of thanksgiving to God, I thought I would start a meal with a prayer thanking some of the people who were involved in making this the meal. So I would say thank you to the farmer who grew the tomato, and the grocer who sold the tomato to me. And my son, who was 10 at the time, said, "You know, Dad, that's fine, but it's also kind of lame because those people aren't here. They can't hear you. If you really cared, you would go out and thank them in person." And I thought, well, that is a very interesting idea. And I thanked him for his idea, for earning his supper. And I set off on this adventure. And I focused on coffee because I thought it would be good to focus on a single thing. And I spent several months traveling the world and thanking people in person and by email and by phone for even the smallest part. So it could be the farmer of the coffee beans, but also the logo designer for the coffee shop, or the guy who made the roads that the trucks go on to carry my coffee beans. And there are thousands of people involved in every little thing we do. So it was a total eye-opener and fascinating and a joy to research.
Mm-hmm. The piece you wrote in the Wall Street Journal about this book and this process, you noted the global nature of the cup of coffee that you had. And I'm sort of curious, there's a pushback toward, globally right now, there's a pushback toward regionalism and nationalism, regional economies. And do you think it's possible to make cups of coffee based in America so you don't have to journey all over the world? Or what did your research on that indicate to you?
Well, that is a good question. I think right now, yes, it is one of the points of the book was to show that it doesn't take a village to make a cup of coffee. It takes the world, because the coffee beans are grown in Colombia. The parts of the furnace for the steel, the bricks are made in China. I mean, I could have spent the last 10 more years traveling the world because it's such an interconnected economy. And in part, this was sort of trying to show that globalism has good parts and bad parts. But overall, I think it is better for the world, and that we should resist this tribalism, this extreme nationalism, which is having a little upsurge right now, and trying to remind people that we live in a global world, and that try to tamp down this us versus them mentality. So that was one of the big themes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you noted that the idea related to your earlier book, The Year of Living Biblically, right?
Right.
I was reading on your author page there. You were describing sort of some of what led you to the book, and I wonder. I think on the coastal cities in the U.S. and maybe other big cities in different parts of the world, sometimes it's easy for us to, I think, minimize religion or its role in the world. And you touch on that, I think, in the pages. So could you tell us about how this idea emerged for you and how you convinced a publisher to let you do this project.
Of course. Well, yeah, as I say in the book, I grew up with little to no religion. I say I'm Jewish, but I'm Jewish in the same way the Olive Garden is Italian. So no offense to the Olive Garden. But I had a son, and at the time, this was 10 years ago, and I had a newborn son, and I also was just interested to see that religion was not going away. It remained a huge force. And so I wanted to explore it. And I like to explore things first person. That's sort of my MO. So I thought, well, what if I wrote a book exploring the Bible by actually living it, by walking in the footsteps of our forefathers and foremothers, and following every rule of the Bible as literally as possible. So that's what I did, and I thought it would be an interesting book. I wrote a proposal, and the publisher liked it, partly because just what you said, religion is such a big force, and I think it's underreported. And so I spent the year following every rule, the famous ones, like the Ten Commandments and love your neighbor, but also the lesser known ones, especially from the Old Testament, like don't shave the corners of your beard. And it's hard to know where the corners are, so I just let the whole thing grow until I looked like Ted Kaczynski, and I spent a lot of time at airport security. And also, the Bible says, don't wear clothes made of mixed fibers. So I got rid of all of my polycotton blends. I went all in. I wanted to follow everything. And it was fascinating. And I loved it. And I wanted the book to show I wanted it to be a nuanced book so that it wasn't an endorsement of religion, but it also wasn't an indictment of religion. I wanted to show that what I believe is true, that religion has wonderful parts and is a force for good often, but it also has dangerous parts that if it can be used to justify horrible behavior. So I wanted to show both sides, and hopefully I got that across.
Yeah, and when the book came out 10 years ago, I remember it being reviewed in the big papers and magazines and on the radio, and it seemed like it was everywhere. And what was that like? What kinds of were you still wearing the beard and the robes and during the book tour?
I did not have the beard and robes. I had shaved it off after the year, so no sandal. But I did have lots of pictures of my beard, and that I think helped a lot in marketing. And I was very nervous when the book was coming out because I thought it was going to be super controversial. But I was really lucky or happily surprised with the reaction because I think the non-religious people liked that I showed some of the problems with taking the Bible literally and fundamentalism. I sort of tried to expose fundamentalism as a terrible idea. But religious people were happy that I took it seriously. I did want to see the good side. So it was funny to be able to, I spoke at lots of atheist meetings, but I also spoke at tons of churches and synagogues. And it turned out just from a purely mercenary point of view, it was actually a good decision because people, I got both markets. I got the atheists and the religious people. Yeah. So thank God for that.
Right.
Although I'm an agnostic.
You're still an agnostic. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
You started as an agnostic before the project and still there, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, one of the interesting advisors, because I had a bunch of advisors. I had ministers and rabbis and scholars and atheists, but one of them had an interesting analysis of religion, which is the 3 B's. So belief, belonging, and behavior. So belief in God, belonging to a community like your church or synagogue, and then behavior, which is either the rituals you do or the ethical behavior that the religion endorses. So I always say, you know, I kind of, two of the three resonated with me. I do see the advantages of having a community, as long as that community doesn't evolve into tribalism. There's like a difference between community and tribe. So being open to other communities and not insular. And then I do see the loveliness of some rituals. Like, you know, I'm Jewish. I don't believe the story of Passover actually happened like it says, but if you do sort of a soft focus and think of it as, you know, about justice and liberation, and it's quite a lovely ritual. So I see the advantages of the two B's, but I never got that third B.
Okay. So, you know, by focusing your year on the Old Testament, especially, I imagine that all three Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, maybe Islam as well, and Christianity could see some value. Did you, curious about your readership from the different communities and the results in the last 10 years and response, and, you know, where you've spoken, did all three sort of find some affinity in the work, or more some than others?
Well, no, it was very interesting because, yes, I didn't get as much reaction from the Muslim community, but Christian and Jewish communities both were very interested because, like, you know, the Old Testament is, of course, a big part. And I did explore the New Testament some. Originally, when I conceived the book, it was going to be 6 months on the Old Testament and 6 months on the New. But when I actually did it, it turned out to be 9 months on the Old and 3 months on the New. And if I did it again, I might even split it up into 2 different books. But the reason the Old Testament got longer shrift is that first of all, I'm Jewish, so I sort of felt more comfortable in my own tradition. And secondly, a lot of it was about the rules of the Bible. And the Old Testament is more of a rules-based approach. The New Testament has a bunch, so I was able to explore that. But I also loved, part of the book was visiting religious communities to see how they interpreted the Bible literally or not. So I loved being able to spend time with different Christian denominations. Like, I spent some time with the Amish, which was fascinating.
Pennsylvania, or where did you go?
Yeah, I went to Pennsylvania. I stayed over, and I mean, they're a funny interview because they believe, you know, their words should be few and wise. So they're not chatterboxes. So interviewing them was a challenge. But I even got an Amish joke. The guy told me an Amish joke. So which I can tell you. What was
it? Yeah.
Well, he said, well, what was it? It was like, what's the difference between, what happened when the Amish man married the Mennonite woman? She drove him buggy.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, God. Yeah. Well, for an Amish guy, that's like, you know, Chris Rock material. That's like stellar.
Oh, yeah.
So
you did real reporting here, too. It was not just on your own life, trying to follow the Old Testament in New York City, but by visiting and reporting on other faith communities.
Exactly. When I write, I love to combine just those two, my own experience, but also reporting on the world at large. And I like to read that too. I don't think, you know, I'm not delusional enough to think that my own life is the only one that's interesting. So I use my life as an excuse to report on the world.
Yeah. So any other favorite anecdotes, most hilarious experiences you had reporting this?
Well, I mean, there were 2 types of, as we discussed, there's, you know, visiting other communities, which was fascinating. So visiting, I did explore the Jehovah's Witness movement, and I live in New York City, so they actually don't come over to your apartment. You don't get the door knocks, so I had to request one, which is already a little weird. And then he came over, and I am proud of this. I think I'm one of the only people who has ever out Bible talked a Jehovah's Witness. He came over, and after like 3.5 hours, he's looking at his watch. He's like, I gotta go. I got a life. But I was just so fascinated with his point of view, and that I could have kept talking much longer. So there was that. But then there were the experiences that were trying to translate the Bible, which has some very ancient practices and rules into modern day life. So in the Hebrew scripture, it says that you have to stone adulterers. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? So I was able to stone one adulterer. I'll tell you quickly,
wow.
I was in Central Park, and I was dressed, I was into it. So I had my beard and my sandals and my robe, and a guy came up to me and said, what's going on? Why are you dressed like that? And I explained, well, I'm trying to follow all the rules of the Bible, from the 10 Commandments to stoning adulterers. And he said, well, I'm an adulterer. Are you going to stone me? And I said, well, that would be fantastic. Thank you for that offer. And I took out a pile of stones from my pocket, because I have been carrying around stones for ages, hoping to run into an adulterer. And they, just so you know, they were small. They were like pebble size, because I knew I didn't want to kill the guy. So I showed him. I was like, these would be what I stone you with. He grabbed them out of my hand. He was very aggressive and threw them at my face. So
Wow.
I thought an eye for an eye is also mentioned in the Bible. And I tossed one back at him. And that's how I was able to check that off my list. But it allowed me to talk about, I think one thing that I love is taking something ridiculous, but then... So I wrote about that for a page, but then I could write 2 pages on, how can we reconcile that the Bible has some of these really harsh, ancient punishments with, how can we make that relevant today, if at all? Like, how can we, what does it mean to modernize the Bible, or does it evolve, or should we be stoning people still? And fundamentalism, you could talk about, all is a window into that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I imagine you were on the 9-month on the Old Testament, reporting at that phase, because
that's right.
That's
right.
Exactly on the spectrum of fundamentalism or extreme fundamentalism with any of the world religions. There's also, just so listeners know, we don't think the entire all religion commands stoning adulterers.
Oh,
right?
no.
Yeah.
I highly discourage stoning adulterers. Yeah. So please do not do that. But it is interesting that it allowed me to talk about, if you take some of these texts literally, mm-hmm. then you are going to be acting in a very brutal manner. So I think religion at its best is able to adapt and really... sort of retranslate for modern times. And because, otherwise, and that was one of the points of the book, is there are millions of Americans who say they take the Bible literally. And that's why they believe in young earth creationism, that the world is 6,000 years old. That's why they say that homosexuality is a sin, because it does mention a couple of times in the Bible. But part of my point was, yes, the Bible says that, but it also says, don't wear clothes made of mixed fibers. And it also says, slavery, never condemn slavery. So you're not really taking the Bible literally. You're taking parts of the Bible literally. You are cherry picking. And I think it's okay to cherry pick. It's all about cherry picking the right parts to me. And the right parts to me are the parts about compassion, about loving your neighbor, about accepting outcasts. And so that's what resonated with me. And there are, one of the people I profiled were what they called them red letter Christians. Mm-hmm. And they believe in some Bibles, Jesus' words were written in red. So that's what we're going to focus on. And they point out, they have a pamphlet that says, here's what Jesus said about homosexuality. And you open it up and it's empty. So their point is, Jesus talked about the poor. He talked about outcasts. He talked about forgiveness. That's what they focus on, instead of homosexuality, abortion, and other issues like that. So,
Well, you said you studied philosophy in college at Brown, and I think when it comes to interpreting religion, it takes theology and philosophy, and so you were studying the text, right, and trying to live it. And so what kind of interplay in the reporting and the writing, in terms of theologians, and figuring out how do people interpret or cherry pick, as you said, these different ways, and what kind of, how should we live in a way, from your perspective, as someone who tried to live the code, the word, the text? Yeah.
Well, there's a quote, I think it was William Yates, but he said, we both read the Bible day and night. You see black and I see white. So that to me is true. You can interpret the Bible in radically different ways and focus on different parts of the Bible. And to me, just in terms of philosophy, I think the golden rule is a really solid rule. I prefer the platinum rule. I don't know if you know the platinum rule. Because the golden rule is treat others as you would have them treat you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which is great. And I think the world would be much better if we all follow that. The one catch on that is like we have slightly different tastes. So, if you are a huge lover of, I don't know, strawberry ice cream, and someone else hates it, and you buy them strawberry ice cream as a gift, that's not really great. So the platinum rule is just a little tweak on it, where it says, do unto others as they would have you do unto them. So just getting inside the other person's mind and seeing what they want, as opposed to just imposing your own. But yeah, to me, the part about religion that make the world a better place are compassion, thinking about others. I mean, you look at what religion did for the civil rights movement. And I think slavery is actually an interesting case, because you had people who used the Bible to advocate for emancipation. But you also had people use the Bible to say that it was biblically approved, and that the descendants of Cain were meant to be slaves by God, the mark of Cain. So it's complicated, but yeah, if you can just take a step back and just say, how can we make the world a better place? And whatever tools we can use to make that happen, to make more kindness, more compassion, that to me is what's important.
Yeah, and I think C.S. Lewis and others, C.S. Lewis had talked about the Tao, the idea of the Tao, where there are, it's like a Venn diagram where the major world religions, there's a center there where they agree on a lot of things around honesty, or around sort of compassion, or various things, and that's what we should try to focus on to create space. That religion, if there's a way my personal view is that freedom of religion is in our Constitution in the U.S. Freedom of religion, freedom of the press are in the same amendment to the Constitution. And I sort of think if that was something practiced in the world, what kind of a better place would we be in, where there was more freedom, more space of belief.
Oh, absolutely. I think
as a way to accept and understand others' beliefs as well.
Right. No, I think that's super important. And respecting others. It was interesting when the Pittsburgh tragedy, where the shooting at the synagogue, I did some research, and I found that my third great uncle was one of the founders of that.
Wow.
And what I loved is when I read his obituary, he was a Jew, but the speakers at his funeral were a rabbi and a Christian minister, which is super unusual at the time, and still is, I suppose. Yeah. But he was really involved in the interfaith relations and trying to help they teamed up to help with the needy and the poor. And I love that. So I thought that was, I wrote about that because I was like, this is a way to combat the darkness of this guy who is so obsessed with differences, and instead focus on like we can band together to help.
Absolutely. Yeah. The book, it came out 10 years ago, and I noticed it was translated into German. It's like Die Bibel und ich, the Bible and I.
Right.
Where has it been translated? What in the last 10 years now? What have been the results in terms of the impact of the book? Where it's gone? What's happened from it?
Yeah, it has. It was translated into about 15 languages, which was lovely. I got a lot of emails from around the world, and also they even from the very start, the moment it came out, they were trying to turn it into a TV show or a movie. So I got to see the hilarious and crazy way that Hollywood works, and eventually, just last year, it was turned into a CBS show called Living Biblically that lasted 13 episodes. And I always say, the religious phrase, "Hate the sin, love the sinner." That's the way I felt about the show. I loved the people who put it on, like the actors and the writers. I was not as fond of the actual show that resulted, and it was very loosely based on me in my book. They changed the name of the guy to Chip. He became from Jewish. He became a lapsed Catholic, and they didn't focus. I liked my book to focus partly on the most bizarre parts of the Bible and the most relevant and useful, because I wanted to show you don't have to take everything in the Bible. You can ignore some stuff.
Right.
But the TV show was more of like a morality play where the guy became, one would be on lying, and he tried to stop lying for an episode, which I have a chapter in my book about that. But they didn't even let him grow the beard because CBS was afraid that it would scare off middle America. So to me, that was a big problem, not taking a stand against fundamentalism, which I think has become more of a problem since the book came out.
Yeah. You mean more religious fundamentalism or political fundamentalism or both? Or?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Just the idea of the idea of rigidity, and I think that I think it's I am not a fan of the fact that the religious right played a large part in electing our current president. I think because if you take Jesus's message, and I'm no expert, but this is from my own experience, like that this administration is not following the message, especially the parts about compassion and helping others. I find that the sort of the radical, the rigid right-wing aspect of religion I find disturbing.
Yeah, well, and I agree with your analysis on our current president. And one thing that strikes me as frankly odd was that it was the religious right who was opposing, Bill Clinton. You can take Bill Clinton had some of the same personal character flaws in terms of adultery, or for example, if that's an important piece of analysis for you. And so I heard the religious right during the 90s saying this person, Bill Clinton's unfit for office, he's an adulterer, but yet when the current candidate, Trump, I've had conversations with some people who support him and say, well, God's got him there. Who knows? She's probably lying, or we don't know about that. That's between him and God.
Interesting.
Where to me the evidence is quite convincing that he's a serial adulterer, and so that is one example where I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Sometimes here.
I think well said.
In play.
And I think that's one of our big problems in the world is motivated reasoning. So, you decide, on something, and then whatever the evidence is against it, you refuse to budge. Mm-hmm. And you only see things through one point of view. And I think that's dangerous.
Yeah. So 10 years later, what's the book's impact on you, the change for you? It sounds like your own beliefs didn't change, but in terms of your own, like the experience from the reporting and where it's taken you, just curious what, anything else, how...
Well, it definitely had a huge impact on me. I mean, on my worldview, the idea of gratitude, which is big in the Bible, I really embraced that and wrote the book on gratitude, was inspired by that. In terms of like just my own morality, I loved part of trying to have this moral makeover and be more, more generous, more compassionate, and more, less covetous. And, I'm still, I think, an incredibly selfish person because I'm a human. But I think this has helped me move like maybe 20%, 30% in a better direction. And and then just in terms of, I love the idea of a community. So I am part of my synagogue's community a little, but I think it doesn't have to be a religious community. The idea is a community that you can get together with shared goals and support each other. There's so much evidence that is really crucial for your health, really crucial for making political change. So I'm also part of a community called Effective Altruism, which is this community where they try to sort of apply super rational, like Wall Street type statistics to charity and figure out what are the most effective charities. And I have fallen in love with their point of view, and I love the people there because they're so passionate and they're so good at looking at the big picture. Like, what is it we should be don't just give to one because they've got a great commercial. Like, let's look at what really works.
Yeah, fascinating. So your new book, Thanks 1,000, where can they buy it if they want to buy this or your earlier book?
They can buy it at any independent bookstore. I'm a fan of those, but it's also on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and pretty much anywhere. I mean, I say I am a total hypocrite, so I say I love independent bookstores, which I do, but I also buy a lot for my Kindle because it's just so convenient to have 50 books in my pocket.
Yeah, and sometimes it's maybe hard to find an independent bookstore in some parts of the country or world. So, so
but
check
they're still
out,
wonderful, so still go to them.
Yeah, so check out The Year of Living Biblically, which we've talked about, and check out A.J. Jacobs' new book, Thanks 1,000. Thanks for being here with us, A.J. Thanks on behalf of all of our listeners at Religion Unplugged.
Thank you, Paul. I loved it. Thanks 1,000.
You're welcome 1,000.
And you've been listening to a conversation between our executive director, Paul Glatter, and author A.J. Jacobs about his latest book, Thanks 1,000. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Please take a moment to follow our podcast and to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check us out online at religionunplugged.com and themediaproject.org.